supernatural stories to send shivers down your spine. Remember to comment, like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified. Looking at yourself in sudden death. So about 3 months ago, I was on my way home from my second oldest son's house. It was late evening but still daylight. The road that I was travelling was a state route 2 lane. The area was rural with a combination of cornfields and woods with quite a few hilly areas. Traffic was fairly light. At one point, I came upon a fire truck blocking the way. Road was closed, so I turned around and, being familiar with the area, made my way around the closure and went on. I texted, let's just say, someone that I know that's on the local sheriff's department and asked what was going on with the road closed. Now, before he answered back, I had an overwhelming feeling hit me to stick around in the area. There's a cemetery close to that area that I go to quite often and record videos and audio, so that's where I started heading to. I then get a response. It's a fatal crash with a car versus a truck, head on. Female driver, deceased, and she's from the area. After I pulled into the cemetery, I got another message. This one had 2 photos attached to it. I opened the attachments, and it was as horrible as I had imagined. One photo was of her car, totally destroyed. Sheets still covering the driver compartment. No, her body wasn't visible. And there were 2 firefighters in the photo. One standing at the driver's door looking down into the car. Next to him was the medical examiner, I believe, who was also looking down into the driver area. The second firefighter was standing on the passenger side at the door. He too was staring down into the driver area. All 3 had a somber look on their faces. The look made you think that they are thinking to themselves, what a shame, what a waste, too young, and that sort of stuff. Now, in the background of this photo was what you'd expect to see. A fire truck, another emergency vehicle, and of course, trees and so on. It's daylight with clear skies. I'm trying to allow the reader to see what's in the photo without sharing the photo itself. Now, I've been given the deceased driver's name because, due to the career that I had retired from, I had dealt with her on several occasions, and he knew that. He too had dealt with her a couple of times. Now, as I sat there at the cemetery looking at this photo, I kept getting that overwhelming feeling that I was missing something that was in the photo. And that inner voice, if you want to call it that, kept telling me to look again, keep looking. So that's exactly what I did. I kept looking at it. Finally, something said, enlarge it. Zoom in on the 2 at the driver's door. It was almost like something was begging me to keep looking and not stop until I found it. So that's what I did. And then it was like a hammer hitting me in the head. Every hair on my body stood on end all at once, and I gasped for a breath of air, and I became physically sick to my stomach. As I'm writing this, I've got tears in my eyes, and I'm fighting not to cry. As I stated, I knew this female, but it had been a few years since I had dealt with her. But there was no denying it. In that photograph of the crash scene, just behind the 2 EMS workers standing at the driver's door, was the face of the deceased driver. I couldn't believe what I was looking at, and for me, there was no denying that she was standing behind them, looking down into the driver's compartment. The look on her face was the look of complete and total shock, like she was staring at her own body crumpled up in the floorboard area, asking herself, why? What have I done? What about my daughter? Because she was leaving behind a 5-year-old daughter. I took a screenshot of the enlarged photo to show the deputy. He's somewhat of a skeptic. The following day I went to see him and got the full story of what happened took place before I showed him the screenshot, and the look on her face is explained more so when I heard what led to the crash. I'm not going to release the information out of respect for her family, they've paid too much already. So I told him that I wanted him to look at the enlarged version of the photo I was sent. When I held it up for him to see, his face instantly, without hesitation, went white. Eyes opened wide and jaw dropped. He gasped for air and looked at me and said, "That's her! There's no way. That's not possible because she was dead when it was taken." Now, I've shown that photo to a limited number of people just out of privacy for her and her family, but everyone that's seen it all have the same reaction and see her face instantly without being told what they're looking for or what they might see. In the photograph, her appearance is what she looked like several years ago, original hair color and style. In the 23 plus years of my job, I've seen a lot of death. I've had people, including children, literally die in my arms, and I've handled a lot of crashes with fatalities where I took the photos, and I have never had this happen. I'd heard of it, but didn't really believe it could happen. Well, I'm no longer skeptical of this type of thing taking place where death was instant and traumatic. I was trying to sleep on the floor one night. I was never able to sleep well in that house, but nothing ever occurred to me. My ear was on the ground, and while I was trying to sleep, I heard a little girl say, "Come down and play," giggled, and then a cat meowed. I instantly got up and climbed into my bunk bed. Another experience was something that happened regularly, and I didn't think about it until we moved out, but when I would try to sleep, it always felt like something was grabbing at my back or rubbing my back. It was strangely comforting, but thinking about it now, it was weird. The most terrifying experience was when I was laying in my bed while everyone else was sleeping. I could see the living room from my bed, and there was a vacuum with a coat on it. And I kid you not, a shadow grew from the ground and took the coat with it as it stood up and started approaching me. I hid under the covers sobbing, telling it to go away. I don't remember how long I sat there, but the vacuum and the coat were there as if nothing happened the next day. I forget all about these events sometimes, but I like the paranormal. And when I start reading ghost stories again, they all come flooding back to me with a vengeance. My dad came to visit me in my dreams. My dad passed away at the end of January this year. He had diabetes and lost both legs to the disease. The past 2 years, his health just kept getting worse until he finally passed from a heart attack. He was only 50 years old and had gotten only 3 months with my son, his firstborn grandson. To say the loss of my dad was really difficult would be an understatement. When he lost his first leg, he moved into my apartment and I helped him with recovery. After a while, I got a place with my boyfriend and he stayed in my old apartment since it was first floor and already handicapped accessible. He lived there alone for 4 more years, and 2 weeks before he passed, he called me to help him sign his renewal because they said it still had my name on the lease. I told my dad I didn't want to sign it because should anything happen to him in the middle of the lease, I'd still be financially responsible for the apartment. He was frustrated with me but said okay. That was the last conversation we had over the phone. A week later, he texted me happy birthday and that he loved me. I responded, "Thank you, love you too," but that was it. He died a week after that. If I had signed the lease like he wanted, I'd be responsible for a full year at an apartment I can't afford. I was overwhelmed with guilt for our last conversation to be bad. 2 nights after he passed though, he came to me in a dream. He told me he was sorry and that I was right to not sign the papers. He gave me the biggest hug and I told him, "Wait, how are you here? You're dead." And he just said, "I know." And then I woke up. Fast forward 2 months later, I'm upset with my mum over something dumb and my dad came to me again. Keep in mind, my parents were divorced for 14 years and my mum hates my dad. But my dad didn't have any animosity towards my mum. When he was alive, he said, "I don't care what she says about me. I don't hate her. I wish her nothing but the best." So the night my dad came to see me in my dream, he was wearing a pink and white checkered shirt and he was coming downstairs. And surrounding him was this bright white light, just like this aura or something. He looked around 30 and was walking again. He pulled me in for a big hug and had the biggest smile on his face. He held me while I sobbed because I missed him so much. He stroked my hair and told me it's okay over and over. I told him I don't understand how he's here because you're gone, and he just held me tighter. He told me he loved me and to be nice to my mother, and just continued to hold me as I cried. I woke up far too soon and started crying more. My son was 8 months old at the time and asleep in my arms in my bed. He woke up when I woke up and wiped my tear coming down my cheek, and then I sobbed even harder. I know my dad's communicating with me via dreams, and it's nice to know I might still see him some way. I still text his number every day with updates on his grandson. He was so excited to be a grandfather. I hope he visits soon. Is there a scientific explanation for this strange thing I saw in the sky? I've googled this and I can't find any answer, so this is my best option for now. Somewhere between 2 AM and 3:30 AM on the 25th of July, I know because I was so freaked out and texted my mum about it, so I was able to go back and check the date and time. My boyfriend and I were driving down Main Street in our city on our way home from my parents' house, and I saw a bright star in the sky. I pointed it out to my boyfriend and was like, wow, look at that really bright star, babe, it's moving. The star shot from the right side of the sky to the left side of the sky, pretty fast. It was almost like a shooting star, but it was extra bright and moved smoothly and far without the light dimming or going away. Then, this is when I really started freaking out. It stopped in one spot and started to elongate. I literally watched it growing and getting bigger. It then turned into a fucking crescent moon. My mind was literally blown and still is. There was nothing at all on the ground to obstruct my view of the star or moon. So the fact it was moving like that and changing shape right before my eyes made me feel like it was something from the Twilight Zone. All of this happened over the span of about 13 to 20 minutes, how long it takes me to get to my home from my parents' house. Now, I've been looking it up here and there and I haven't found anything that describes what I saw. Maybe someone here on Reddit knows. If it's just something I don't know about, I'll feel really stupid, but I'd rather at least have some answers. Anyone know what this is? Weird shit happening in my house since dating a new guy. Starting in August of this year, I started dating this new guy. The very first night he stayed over, my smoke detectors alarmed for no reason. And that would keep happening on random nights for a while. Then other electronics started acting funny, like my headlamp. I would notice it on randomly. I'd turn it off and then it would just turn on again. It would take like 10 tries just to get it to stay off. Earlier this week, I awoke to a bright light. It was my printer's LCD screen, which turned on in the middle of the night. I turned it off and went back to sleep. The next night, the robot vacuum started running in the middle of the night. Same thing as with the headlamp happened. I pushed a button, turned it off, and it would just start up again. It took several tries to get it to stop. Oh, and when nothing weird happens in the middle of the night, I'll often just wake up somewhere around 3 or 4 AM just feeling wide awake, and I'll often have trouble getting back to sleep. That part could be unrelated, but all the other signs are making me wonder if my spirit guides are trying to warn me about him, or maybe my new boo brought along with him a different kind of boo. What do you lot think? My boyfriend and I talked a bit this weekend, and we've come up with a few possible explanations. One of his exes is jealous of our relationship and is trying to sabotage it. He has one ex who reached out to him after he met me. He had to tell her he'd found someone new and she seemed very jealous. He also said she's very spiritual, but in a dark, evil way. She was apparently manipulative. Before he told me all of this, I had a dream. I asked the universe what was causing all the electrical issues, and her name and face, he had mentioned her name and general description before, came up. Maybe this ex is casting evil spells on me, which is causing the electrical shit to happen. 2. He has another ex who went into a coma briefly after a car accident. She's alive now, but will frequently message him through Facebook trying to get back with him. She seems mentally unstable and still seems like she's in love with him. Also, during this time while she was in a coma, my boyfriend said it was one of his lowest points of his life because he felt guilty he didn't ever like her. She was always just pushing for a relationship with him and he wasn't into it, so he felt really responsible to care for her after the accident, but eventually had to phase out spending time with her because she always wanted something more, and it was clear she couldn't just be friends. I don't really know what this could mean, but I read a couple of comments asking about NDE, and this ex clearly experienced one and still wants my boyfriend. 3. I've always felt my grandfather was my spirit guide since he passed in 2017. So either he's trying to warn me about this new guy, that I should stay away from him, or maybe he's giving my boyfriend problems to solve so he can help me. I think both my grandfather and my boyfriend have a lot in common, in that they both love fixing things around the house. My boyfriend solved the smoke detector issue by not hardwiring them and just running them on batteries. 4. There is just an electrical issue in the house. It is an older home built in 1936. And the previous owner apparently did some work updating the electrical system, but I don't know how all that stuff works. Thing is, I've never had any problems living here before, until now. I lived in a house that was built on a cemetery. When I was in university, I lived in an older house that was built beside a church. The house was over 100 years old, but I'm not quite sure of the actual age. I lived in the basement and had a few housemates. We didn't know at the time that it was built on a cemetery. That was discovered shortly after I moved out. Weird things would happen in the house, but I'm still not sure if it was haunted or just purely coincidental. I would hear footsteps above my room late at night, and when I would ask who was in the kitchen at 2 AM, my housemates would say they never came downstairs at all. My one housemate had a cat, and the one day we were in the kitchen, the back door opened by itself and the cat walked in. I did see what I believed was a shadow figure in the house. I had a bookshelf beside my bed and a Buddha statue on one of the top shelves. In the middle of the night, there was a huge bang, and when I woke up I saw a black figure jump from the bookshelf to the floor and run out of the room. The shelf with the Buddha figure had fallen off the bookshelf and the Buddha had smashed to pieces on the floor. I thought at first maybe it was my housemate's cat that had somehow knocked the shelf off, but the next morning when I told my housemate what had happened, they said the cat had been locked in their room with them all night. Shortly after I moved out, the house was owned by the church and there was a parking lot in the backyard. The church was adding an addition and had started constructing and digging up the parking lot behind the house. During the construction, human remains were found, which obviously halted the construction until it was determined why the remains were there. It was found that before the house existed, a small cemetery had been on that land. At least 30 skeletons were found, and I'm not sure if they were able to determine the identities or why they were buried there. For some reason, when the house was built, it was decided to build on top of the cemetery, and the records of the cemetery's existence were either lost or forgotten over time. I'm not sure if other housemates had experiences there, but it was a creepy house, and I remember them mentioning hearing things at night and not liking to stay there alone. I'm unsure if it was truly haunted, but weird things definitely did happen there. Supernatural stories to send shivers down your spine. Remember to comment, like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified.